You were trained to explain yourself. Conditioned, not educated. From childhood onward, authority figures drill the same lie into your nervous system. Good people clarify. Reasonable men justify. Innocence proves itself through words. That belief was never moral. It was administrative. It exists to make you legible, manageable, and predictable. Power does not need to be understood. Power needs to be felt. The moment you explain an action, you implicitly admit that it requires approval. You shift the frame from sovereignty to defense. Explanations are not neutral communication. They are a posture of submission dressed up as civility. You are no longer the one acting, you are the one responding. Predators recognize this instantly. When you explain, you slow down. When you slow down, you invite inspection. Inspection leads to judgment. Judgment creates hierarchy. And in that hierarchy, the one who demands explanations has already placed himself above you. Courts, workplaces, relationships, and governments all operate on this same primitive structure. The one who must justify is already on trial. You've been told that explanations create trust. This is another inversion. Explanations create visibility. Explanations fail because they are not heard as truth. They are processed as intelligence. Every sentence you offer is stripped for parts: intent, fear, desire, limit. You think you are clarifying. The observer is profiling. This is the mechanism you were never taught. Humans are pattern hunters. When you explain why you acted, you reveal how you think under pressure. When you explain what you felt, you expose leverage points. When you explain what you meant, you hand over the keys to your internal map. From that moment on, you are no longer an unknown variable, you are a system that can be. Reverse-engineered. Power depends on asymmetry of information. The moment symmetry appears, power drains. Understand this clearly. People do not ask for explanations to understand you. They ask to locate you. Once located, you can be boxed, labeled, morally ranked, or strategically neutralized. Explanations make you stationary. Silence keeps you mobile. Watch how interrogation works: legal, social, or emotional. The first demand is always the same: explain yourself. Not because the questioner lacks information, but because they want you talking. Talking creates contradictions. Contradictions create guilt. Guilt creates compliance. This is not a theory. It is a system refined across centuries. Every explanation narrows your future options. Once you define your motive, deviating from it looks suspicious. Once you justify a boundary, crossing it requires a second justification. You begin stacking rationalizations like sandbags, weighed down by your own words. Silence, by contrast, is frictionless. It preserves optionality. There is another layer most men miss. Explanations do not end scrutiny, they escalate it. The more coherent you sound, the more aggressively others probe. Why? Because clarity invites counter-argument. The moment you offer logic, you invite debate. Debate is not dialogue. It is a contest for dominance, and the one explaining has already accepted the inferior position. The dominant never debates his right to act. He acts, then watches reactions. This is why explanations are especially dangerous in hostile environments, workplace politics, unstable relationships, competitive hierarchies. There, information is currency. Anything you reveal will be traded, reframed, or weaponized by someone with fewer scruples and more patience. Machiavelli warned that men judge more by appearances than by reality. Explanations attempt to correct appearances. That is a losing game. Appearances are faster, stickier, and emotionally louder than words. While you are explaining, others are deciding. Silence interrupts this process. It starves the observer of narrative. Without narrative, they project. Projection exposes their own fears, ambitions, and biases. While they are busy revealing themselves internally, you remain unreadable. Unreadability is not emptiness. It is compression. Think of a sealed vault versus an open ledger. The ledger invites audits. The vault invites caution. People treat what they cannot see with more respect, not less, because uncertainty activates risk assessment. Risk assessment slows aggression. This is the core mechanism. Explanations reduce perceived risk. Reduced risk invites encroachment. By denying explanations, you force others to calculate in the dark. They move slower. They test less. They hesitate. And hesitation is where control quietly changes hands. Most men sabotage themselves by oversharing under the illusion of fairness. Fairness is irrelevant in power games. Only position matters. Now you see the mechanism. What remains is to identify who exploits it and how they do it instinctively. Shall I expand Chapter 3 now? Power dynamics are not abstract. They are embodied in people. And those people fall into patterns so old they might as well be biological. If you cannot identify the archetypes in front of you, you will keep explaining yourself to the wrong man and paying for it. The first archetype is the talker. The talker believes words create safety. He explains preemptively, clarifies excessively, and narrates his intentions like a confession. He thinks transparency makes him trustworthy. In reality, it makes him harvestable. Others learn his boundaries before they ever test them. He is easy to maneuver because he announces his internal state in advance. The talker is not weak by intelligence. He is weak by conditioning. He was rewarded early in life for compliance and punished for ambiguity. Authority figures taught him that silence equals guilt. So he fills silence compulsively, unaware that every word is a signal flare. Then there is the judge. The judge demands explanations as a ritual of dominance. He rarely explains himself. Instead, he asks questions framed as concern, fairness, or process. Just help me understand. This is not curiosity, it is positioning. Each answer you give reinforces his role as evaluator and your role as defendant. The judge thrives in institutions, offices, courts, committees, families. He enforces norms while pretending neutrality. His real power lies not in decisions, but in making others justify theirs. If you explain to a judge, you have already accepted his authority. The third archetype is the one you must become familiar with if you intend to survive: the silent predator. The silent predator explains nothing unless it serves him. He observes, withholds, and lets others talk themselves into exposure. When confronted, he responds with minimalism, short statements, no emotional color, no narrative. He understands that ambiguity creates gravity. Others orbit him, unsure where the edge is. This archetype is rare because it is socially uncomfortable. Silence triggers anxiety in most people. They rush to relieve it. The silent predator uses this reflex against them. While they speak, he learns. While they explain, he maps. These archetypes interact predictably. The judge feeds on the talker. The silent predator feeds on both. Most men think the world is divided into good and bad actors. It isn't. It's divided into exposed and concealed. Exposure invites correction. Concealment forces negotiation. Notice something critical. The silent predator is not aggressive by default. He does not argue. He does not defend. He lets others overextend. When pressure comes, he does not collapse into explanation, he compresses further. This creates an imbalance. Humans are wired to seek equilibrium. When they cannot extract information, they grow cautious or frustrated. Both states reduce their effectiveness. The talker mistakes this for hostility and panics. He explains more. The judge mistakes it for defiance and escalates. Both reveal themselves. This is why denying explanations is not just a tactic, it is an archetypal alignment. You are choosing which role you inhabit. You cannot be sovereign and legible at the same time. Most conflicts are decided before words escalate. They are decided at the moment one man explains and the other does not. From that moment on, the hierarchy is set. If you still believe explanations are harmless, look at who never gives them and who constantly demands them. The pattern is consistent across cultures and centuries. Now the threat becomes unavoidable. Because once you see these archetypes, you must confront a brutal reality. The world is structured to extract explanations from you and reward those who refuse. If this were merely a social quirk, it could be ignored. It isn't. The demand for explanations is one of the oldest control technologies in human history. It appears wherever power is: contested courts, palaces, inquisitions, tribunals, modern offices. Different costumes. Same blade. History is mercilessly consistent. Men who explain themselves did not survive long enough to be vindicated. In royal courts, explanation was often a death sentence. A noble summoned to clarify his loyalty was already marked. The hearing was theater. Every word spoken was ammunition, phrases twisted, intentions reframed, hesitations magnified. Silence was read as defiance, but explanation was read as guilt. The outcome was predetermined. The explanation merely provided justification. This pattern never disappeared. It evolved. Modern legal systems institutionalized it. Interrogation rooms are built around the same principle. Talk long enough and you will betray yourself, not because you are guilty, but because humans cannot maintain narrative coherence under pressure. Prosecutors do not need truth. They need inconsistency. Explanation supplies it. Workplace politics mirror this structure with cleaner language. Let's align. Walk me through your thinking. Help me understand your decision. These are not collaborative phrases. They are containment procedures. Once you explain, your decision is no longer yours. It becomes a document others can edit. Human nature makes this trap effective. People are deeply uncomfortable with uncertainty. When confronted with unexplained action, they feel a loss of control. That loss triggers moralization. They label silence as rude, evasive, or unethical, not because it is, but because it threatens their interpretive dominance. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He warned rulers against excessive justification, not because it offended virtue, but because it dissolved authority. A prince who explains himself invites comparison. Comparison invites judgment. Judgment invites rebellion. Notice how revolutions begin. The ruler starts explaining policies, apologizing, clarifying intentions, trying to be understood. This signals weakness long before any military failure. The public senses it. Confidence collapses. Power leaks out through language. On a smaller scale, the same dynamic governs personal conflict. When accusations arise, the innocent man rushes to explain. He believes facts will save him. They rarely do. Accusations are emotional weapons, not logical claims. By explaining, he validates the accuser's frame. He accepts that something must be answered for. The silent man, by contrast, denies the frame itself. This is where the threat sharpens. Once you are known as someone who explains, explanations will be demanded from you constantly. You become administrable. Systems expand to exploit predictable behavior. The more you comply, the more compliance is expected. Silence breaks this feedback loop. It introduces cost. History shows that men who survived hostile environments, warlords, statesmen, court survivors, used opacity as armor. They spoke less, revealed later, and never under pressure. Their enemies complained about their unfairness, coldness, or arrogance. Those complaints were admissions of failure. The threat is not misunderstanding. The threat is being fully understood by those who do not wish you well. Once this is seen, innocence becomes irrelevant. Truth becomes secondary. What matters is whether your internal world is accessible to external forces, and it is every time you explain. Once you understand the trap, behavior must change or knowledge becomes another liability. Strategy begins where reflex ends. Denying explanations is not silence by accident. It is silence by design. The first rule is denial without hostility. You do not argue. You do not justify. You do not emotionally react. You simply refuse to enter the explanatory frame. Short statements. Declarative, not defensive. That's my decision. I've considered it. This isn't up for discussion. These are not rude. They are closed systems. They offer no hooks. Most men fail here because they overcompensate. They try to sound reasonable. Reasonableness is the bait. The moment you soften, the demand returns. Predators test boundaries the way water tests cracks incrementally. Your task is not to convince them, but to make further probing inefficient. The second rule is withholding motive. Motive is the crown jewel of leverage. If someone knows why you act, they can manipulate conditions around that why. If they know what you want to avoid, they can threaten it. If they know what you value, they can counterfeit it. So you strip motive from your language. You speak in outcomes, not intentions. You let results speak. If pressed, you repeat the outcome. Repetition without elaboration is not stupidity, it is pressure. Humans expect progression. When it doesn't come, they feel stalled. The third rule is controlled ambiguity. This is where amateurs collapse into either paranoia or performance. Controlled ambiguity is not chaos. It is precision. You decide what remains unclear and what is fixed. Your boundaries are solid. Your reasoning is opaque. This forces others to negotiate with the fact of your position rather than the logic behind it. Ambiguity creates asymmetric effort. Others spend energy interpreting. You spend none clarifying. Over time, this drains their initiative. They approach less often. When they do, they prepare more carefully. This is how authority compounds without confrontation. Expect resistance. Social systems punish men who stop explaining because explanation is the lubricant of compliance. When you withdraw it, others feel friction. They will accuse you of arrogance, secrecy, or bad faith. These accusations are not warnings. They are confirmation that the strategy is working. You must also eliminate the reflex to preemptively explain. This is the deepest conditioning. The urge to justify before being asked. It comes from fear of disapproval. Kill it. Let discomfort exist. Let silence stretch. The first man to break silence usually loses position. Strategic denial also requires timing. Silence does not mean never speaking, it means choosing when. Information released too early is waste. Information released under pressure is surrender. Information released when it cannot be challenged is dominance. This is how serious operators move. They act first. They explain later if at all. And when they do, the explanation is so minimal it reads like inevitability, not persuasion. The final layer of strategy is consistency. One refusal means nothing. A pattern creates reputation. Once you are known as someone who does not explain, demands decrease. Systems adapt. People adjust their behavior around you instead of trying to reframe yours. This is the shift. You are no longer managing perceptions. Others are managing their approach to you. At this point, something inside you will resist. Not intellectually, but identity-wise. because the version of you that explains is about to be killed. That is not optional. This is where most men stop, not because they don't understand the strategy, but because they cannot survive the identity loss required to execute it. The need to be understood is not a virtue. It is a dependency. You were trained to equate explanation with goodness, to believe that if people truly knew you, they would judge you fairly. This is childhood logic smuggled into adult power games. The world does not reward clarity of intention. It rewards control of outcome. To deny explanations consistently, an identity must die. The reasonable man, the good actor, the morally legible self. That version of you lives for validation. He wants consensus. He believes misunderstanding is injustice. He is wrong and he is vulnerable. Identity death feels like social risk because it is. People will withdraw warmth. They will test you with moral pressure. They will attempt to shame you back into legibility. This is selection at work. Systems resist losing control over units they once managed easily. You must let the misinterpretation stand. Not correcting false narratives is the hardest discipline. Every instinct screams to fix the record. But understand this: narratives do not control you, responses to narratives do. When you respond, you confirm relevance. When you remain silent, narratives decay or turn inward. This is the final separation between men who study power and men who wield it. The sovereign self does not seek agreement. He does not chase reputation. He understands that reputation is assigned, not built. Others will define you anyway. Your job is not to guide the definition. It is to remain unaffected by it. At this stage, your behavior will appear cold. That is correct. Warmth is a social currency used to extract concessions. By limiting access to your internal world, you become less exploitable. This does not make you cruel. It makes you non-negotiable. The replacement identity is simple but severe. You are no longer an object to be evaluated. You are a fixed presence. Decisions emanate from you. You do not explain gravity. This shift changes how people interact with you. Conversations shorten. Requests become cautious. Accusations lose momentum. Those who relied on your transparency to manage you drift away. Others, more calculating, adapt their tone. You will feel loneliness here. Not emotional loneliness, but strategic isolation. This is the cost of sovereignty. Most men cannot pay it. They return to explanation because it restores social ease. Do not confuse ease with safety. Once the need to be understood is dead, something else emerges: unreadability. Not mystery as performance, but absence of access. You are not hiding. There is simply nothing available to interrogate. At that point, you no longer fear accusations, misunderstandings, or demands for justification. They bounce off a surface that no longer responds. This is the threshold. One final warning remains.